The New Year's resolution. Let's go ahead to 2024 resolutions. And I'm going to ask you this one: should Mark Davis's New Year's resolution be to hire the interim coach this time?
I don't even think that's a resolution. That's a no-brainer. Like, you already had a hiccup a couple years ago with Rich Bisaccia and everything that he did to keep that team together. And Brady, you know this. As a head coach, you got to be a leader of men first. Like, you can have all the schematic head coaches you want, but at the end of the day, can you galvanize a team? And we've seen it now twice with the Raiders. Like, saw Rich Bisaccia. We saw Mark Davis not do what he's supposed to do. He tried to go with the sexy name and bring in McDaniel, and it didn't work. Now let's see if he's learned his lesson. And because this Raiders team, a lot of people thought they were out of the playoffs. They're still in the playoffs, especially after a big win versus the Kansas City Chiefs last week. And we've seen this team kind of take on the characteristics, the mentality of Antonio Pierce. Like, grit. He was a gritty defender. I played with him my rookie year. One of the smartest guys I've ever played with. And his team has really taken on that mantra. So to me, this ain't a resolution, Will. This is a no-brainer. Like, it should have already been done. Take the interim off Antonio Pierce's name as head coach of the Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, I think that, New Year's resolutions, like, don't mess this up.
Pretty much.
Like, hey, don't mess this up again. And it's not just Antonio Pierce. To me, it's their interim general manager, Champ Kelly, too.
Yeah.
Like, you have two guys who I think so far have worked well together. It makes a lot of sense because he wanted that with Josh McDaniels and their former general manager, too. So that was all part of it. But now I think you have right now a bona fide leader of men that's doing something that we haven't seen before. Like, if you were going to tell me last week before the game, hey, the Raiders are going to win and they're not going to complete a pass for 3/4 of the game.
That's crazy.
I'd be like, what the hell happened? Did Mahomes get hurt?
Exactly.
Like, how is that possible? So there's no doubt. It's if you're Mark Davis, like, don't repeat history in this case. Hire Antonio Pierce, hire Champ Kelly.
And to put it before we move forward, like, when's the last time that we remember a Raiders team being a top 10 in defense?
By the way, the last 20 years, Rich Bisaccia and Antonio Pierce have the two best win percentages.
Exactly. So, like,
coaches.
Derek Carr never had a top 10 defense. This is a top 10 defense. Just to put this in perspective, the Raiders defense has been a laughingstock of the NFL for like the last 20 years. And Antonio Pierce has really, like I said, brought that mantra over there. And also Patrick Graham, I think, should be getting some looks as a head coach. He's done a really good job, too, of getting those players to buy in and play really good football.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Let's stick in the AFC West and the coaching hires. The Chargers' resolution needs to be that they tap their full potential. How do they do that? Who do they hire? Harbs?
No, it's going to be our guy Ben Johnson, most likely.
You think so?
I think to me, it makes the most sense. If you're him, right, you're probably going to have your pick of the litter. Why not tie yourself with a guy like Justin Herbert?
First-time head coach again, though?
That's only the hottest name.
Yeah, I think Harbaugh has a lot, though, only because he's had success at both levels.
Michigan Harbaugh, right?
Yeah. Not John Harbaugh.
Yeah.
It's not like both.
People have been talking about Mike Tomlin potentially getting traded or leaving and going somewhere else.
That's an interesting one.
You're right.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm the Chargers, like, I go all in on finding the guy. And if Mike Tomlin's available, like, I'll put it this way.
Leader, man.
I mean, again, I'm making the phone call.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys willing to trade Mike Tomlin? Bill Belichick's the interesting one, too. Do you call Robert Kraft and say, hey, let's bring him in, see if he rebuilds this, or are you kind of moving past Bill Belichick?
As long as he's not the GM, because his track record as GM has not been good.
No.
It's not been good at
Johnson
all.
is going to ultimately be the Chargers head coach. I just think for him, that's probably the most attractive place to be in regards to knowing you got Justin Herbert. Now, the question is, they're in cap hell. Like, so what are they going to do with Allen? Also Khalil Mack, also Joey Bosa's contract. Like, they got some math to do, like, in regards to the GM and getting numbers right to make sure that they have enough to actually bring in pieces. So that's something that Ben Johnson, I'm sure when he's going through the interview process, teams are interviewing him. He's going to have those questions for the team as well, too. Like, what's the plan in regards to fixing this roster? Because like I said, we're in cap hell.
Right.
Does true or false? The Chiefs' resolution, Travis Kelce's resolution, should be to break up with Taylor Swift because she is causing the downfall of the Kansas City Chiefs.
They're struggling right now with her.
She's being deemed as the Yoko Ono right now.
It literally has.
The NFL, I saw an article like the NFL's over her. Like Chiefs fans were over her.
Yeah.
She's
Brady
been,
Quinn. I'm going to write that tonight. Brady Quinn calling Taylor Swift the Yoko Ono of the NFL.
I did not. That was already, by the way, I saw that somewhere else. I was like, that's interesting. By
the way, can you imagine if you got dragged / canceled by Swifties and your daughters who are obviously obsessed with Taylor Swift were like went back to school after the Christmas break.
A little young.
I don't know about obsessed. They're too young, you know.
Yeah.
But I think one thing they're obsessed with is football right now, and they don't like the results that they're getting from the Chiefs, especially when Daddy laid the points with the Chiefs last week.
Man.
What do you? What's going on with him for real though? Like, is this a situation where they can
fundamentally broken? They have no identity on offense.
Really
me and Brady actually talked about this after the Raiders game. We did the post game show, and if you look at this team, right, I thought for a good portion of the game, they could go with 12, 13 personnel because it seems like Mahomes is more comfortable in doing that. I thought also Isaiah Pacheco coming back would give them a little burst on offense, right? But then he ends up getting a concussion and he's out. And even when he was in the game, they didn't run the ball well. So when you look at this team, I just think they're fundamentally broken. And I actually said this a few weeks ago. When you look at the nuances, right, the details, like Eric Bieniemy, I heard has been a stickler for that, right?
Yeah.
We heard some Commanders players come out and say how demanding he is. Well, that's what he did with the Chiefs last year. And we've heard, LaShawn Shady McCoy come out and other players saying how demanding Eric Bieniemy is. Well, I think they're missing that because how many times have we seen, miscues on offense, whether it's Kadarius Toney lining upside, which is still crazy to me that MVS did it twice in the game when you lost the game because of it just the week before. So, those nuances, those details, I think Eric Bieniemy not being there has really hurt this offense. And then I think it's also a personnel issue, right? When you look at the receiving position, right? Rashee Rice has kind of come on as of late, but Sky Moore never took that jump.
No.
Kadarius Toney has regressed, right? So guys that they were depending on, they haven't taken that next step. So I don't think they can fix this. I told Brady this on, Monday when we did the post game. I honestly think they should lean on their defense, right? Their defense gave up 6 points, and they lost the game. Right. Your defense is good enough where they're going to keep you in games. I don't think we ever would say this with Patrick Mahomes. Just don't lose the game on offense, and we still got a chance to win. And that's where the Chiefs are right now.
Yeah, that's a little bit of an indictment. As much as you're missing Eric Bieniemy, maybe it's also Matt Nagy not being really what you lost in Eric Bieniemy as far as what you're bringing back. I think it's a good point about leaning on the defense, but what that means offensively is you got to run the football. You got to possess the ball. You have to limit the amount of touches that your opponent gets, and that's something that is not Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes style football.
Never has been.
Hey, Will, look up these stats though. Look up Rashee Rice's stats receiving right now as compared to Juju Smith-Schuster in the regular season. Because I think it's kind of telling. Like, this is a team that got away with Kelsey and Juju Smith-Schuster without Tyreek Hill last year, and it led to a Super Bowl. And so that's why I kind of keep going back to, well, what are the two biggest differences? Well, they don't have Bieniemy. That's one thing. But the offensive line play has not been anywhere close to what it was.
Blocking is awful.
Yeah. And the tackles in particular. So that's been the area that I think they've missed out on, and they really haven't adapted to. Right? Like we talk about, what do you have to overcome sometimes as an offense? Maybe you can't run as many 11 personnel sets with 3 wide receivers because you need help at the tight end position and chipping on the way out. Well, it's hard to do that when Travis Kelce is by far and away your best option. You don't have anyone else you can rely on. So there's a lot of issues, but I think the absence of Bieniemy, the way the offensive line is played, in particular on the edges, have played the biggest role. And then honestly, Patrick Mahomes too, and forcing some things, trying to maybe do a little bit too much at times instead of just living to play the next down and relying on that defense.
Right.
That's something too. Like if throughout his career been able to make that big play, well, it's easier when you have Tyreek Hill. It's easier when you have those other guys stepping up. They don't have that. And so now you have to play a different style of football where you're not a game changer. Maybe you have to be more of a game manager and how you go about managing the game scenario and playing in tighter games.
Rashee Rice actually has better stats than Juju Smith-Schuster did through 15 games.
Really?
Which is interesting, and not a lot of people know that. I think he's got more touchdown passes, more yards.
He's come on really strong the last couple of weeks.
He has, and then they featured him. So, that's, as you look into, this week, that's what needs to be featured and continued because, you're not going to find it anywhere else.
Yeah.
And that's the position right now that the Chiefs are in. They've got to rely on a rookie to step up, much like they did last year. Those rookie players in the secondary to step up in big moments on defense. They need that now from Rashee Rice on offense.
Yeah.
This is actually kind of insane. So I looked at weeks 1 through 15 for Juju Smith-Schuster last year. And he was inactive in week 10. So, take that for what it's worth. 96 targets, 74 catches. Rashee Rice through 15 games, 96 targets, 74 catches so far this season.
Oh, wow.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. Juju had like 60 more. Juju had like 50 or 60 more yards over those 15 games, but Rashee Rice has 4 more touchdowns over those 15 games. So it really is like as much as we say you're not. I mean, I think it kind of falls on Kelsey, and I don't think it's Taylor Swift. But if it would get us 5 billion podcast listens, I would be fine with that. I think it falls on Kelsey and just sort of struggling some this year, and then the offensive line. It's just not as good.